Today on Locked On Canadiens, what are the Calgary Flames doing? What are the Winnipeg Jets doing? What will the Bruins do after being ahead 3-1? It was 3-1. I guess the Bruins is what I really want to talk about, so we're going to get to that on today's Locked On Canadiens.
Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to episode 835 of Locked On Canadiens. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. My name is Laura Saba, also known as The Active Stick, and I'm joined, as always, by Scott Matlove, Habs Eyes on the Prize. Scott, how are we doing a day after the Florida Panthers have come back from 3-1 series deficit to beat the President's Trophy winning Boston Bruins, who we hate?
You really put me in a dilemma here, because it's like cheer for the Bruins so the Habs can get the better draft pick, cheer for the worst draft pick and beating the Bruins. And the hardest part about all of that at the end of it is no matter who wins has to go play Toronto in the next round. And now I have to cheer for a worse draft pick so the Panthers beat the Leafs. And I don't know if I love that, but Leaf fans are feeling very cocky and very full of themselves, which admittedly, okay, you slayed your demon. Let's see what you got. But I don't know. Florida has something. I don't know what it is, but they got something. And I am very, very intrigued to watch that series.
We're going to talk a little bit more about Boston and Florida a little bit later in this show, but I think we got to start with the biggest news of the day. We are recording this on Monday evening right after dinner. What is Calgary doing? They parted ways with Brad Treliving. I always pronounce his name incorrectly and then I get yelled at. 2 weeks ago, like at the end of the season. And then now, only now, have they decided they're going to fire head coach Darryl Sutter, sorry. I almost called him Brent Sutter. I don't know what is wrong with me today. I think it's just too soon after I ate. I literally almost said they fired Brent Sutter. They fired Darryl Sutter. And just before a 2-year extension was about to kick in. And it's ugly. And I wonder if this is actually, I know we're going to talk about the Canadiens draft pick in a second, because obviously, this has implications for the Montreal Canadiens draft next year due to the Sean Monahan trade. There's so many conditions on that we'll get into in a second. But you got to think that the year that they had was very disappointing. Some of the players that they had, like Jonathan Huberdeau, didn't have a great season under Sutter. And now we're hearing rumblings, and I don't know if we can credit the rumblings, but we're hearing rumblings that one of the reasons was that players were going to refuse to come back to Calgary unless they made a coaching change.
And I don't know because the way the tweet was worded, and I believe it came from Frank Saravalli, was that, this might have been tied into agents, and it's like there's clauses for players to leave. And I'm like, that sounds very European football-esque that, hey, if this is not met, I can leave on a free or whatever. I look at the Flames and I go, this is a team that was made to be better than they were last year. And last year, they could not get a bounce and a save. Calgary seems like a team that should bounce back with half-decent goaltending this year, because they weren't a bad team. They were a team that outshot opponents like 54-20 a lot, and then just couldn't get a save. It reminded me a lot of Claude Julien as Canadiens head coach, where we've got the puck and we're getting shots and they're going towards the net all the time, and nothing goes in, and the other team comes the other way and scores a goal there. They're a team that feels very between spaces right now. Dan Vladar gets a new contract next year. Mackenzie Weegar's new contract kicks in next year. Jonathan Huberdeau's new contract kicks in next year. The Flames are in a weird spot. And with Darryl Sutter, yes, it's great that you're getting all these shots, But if they're not really helping you win games, it doesn't matter. And I think Treliving and Sutter had different ways they wanted to do this team. And when it looked like they were going to keep Sutter, Treliving was just like, I'm stepping down. I'm out. I can't remember if his contract was up or if he had one more year left and he was due for an extension or whatnot. And I'm sure one of our Flames friends will correct us on that. He just went, I'm out. And then 2 weeks later, like you said, all of a sudden it's, oh, well, we got to fire Darryl Sutter, which means someone went to interim GM, Don Maloney, who is running the team, or ownership, and looked at this and went, this is not going to work. This team will not get where it needs to with Darryl Sutter at the helm. And again, it's great that you have all these shots and you're creating all these chances. But if something is rotten in the room where the coach is either, just verbally like grating on the team or something he's doing is just not working, you eventually have to cut ties and kind of, save your face with that, so to speak. And maybe it's just time. It is good news for the Canadiens because the Flames are deciding we're going to reboot this. They can potentially have a pick between 20 and 32 in 2024, or they could have something in towards the top 10 in 2025, or God forbid 2026 if the Flames end up with a first overall pick next year. Basically, the Canadiens are going to end up with another first round pick as they're hitting those exiting stages of, hopefully, they're exiting stages of this rebuild here in either 2024, 2025, potentially 2026. And that's a good thing for Kent Hughes to have in his back pocket because it's, hey, if you want to have a player out there and you want to trade them and you have that asset, go for it. And it's just the Flames are a weird team. The vibes are less than immaculate, if to steal a phrase from Twitter. And I'm not quite sure what they need to do to fix it or who's going to be the right coach for that team.
So Treliving's contract was actually up at the end of the season, so he's decided he's not coming back. Just, he wasn't going to come back anyway. A lot of GM contracts ending this season. But I think one of the things that goes to show is like Darryl Sutter has a lot of success under his belt. Like he's got like literally on paper, he's got a lot of success under his belt. But it comes for you anyway. If you don't evolve with hockey, if you don't evolve with the NHL, it's going to leave you behind. And his style of coaching is just not what is effective anymore. And we can talk a little bit about that. I think we're going to talk a little bit about Martin St. Louis in like a season review in an episode upcoming. And we'll talk a little bit about coaching and modern coaching and things like that. And that'll come up a little bit later in the coming weeks. But in the meantime, on today's episode, the next thing we want to talk about is what is going on with the Winnipeg Jets. And that is coming up in just one moment. But first, this episode is brought to you by Gametime. How many times do you get stressed out because an artist that you love is going to come to town and you don't know where to get tickets, or you think you've missed the boat and then you scramble to find tickets and they're too expensive? It's so stressful, and it really should not be stressful. Get Gametime. They have flash deals, and it's so easy to use. Gametime is the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Literally, on the day of the event, you can find tickets. You can get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, anything. Whatever you want, you're going to find it on Gametime. And the Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. 110% of the difference. So snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So here's something that is surprising for me, Scott. You are looking at something and you are in disbelief, and I'm going to ask you for a second, like in a second, if it has to do with the Winnipeg Jets or not, because for me, I feel like when the Winnipeg Jets, and I don't mean any offense to anybody, but like the Winnipeg Jets for the last couple of years have felt like a team that you should be able to ignore, and you kind of can't.
The Winnipeg Jets are a team that has never fully hit their potential. They had the best team they had got robbed by Marc-Andre Fleury during Vegas's initial cup run in 2016, I think it was, when Vegas entered the league. The Jets were a wagon that year with a lot of the same pieces we see here, and then they just got goalied in the series because they were destroying worlds. They destroyed the Wild. They destroyed other teams. And then since then, they've just been kind of waffling in mediocrity, and they got beat up by the Knights again in this series. They were not good. They potentially threatened to move the team if they don't get more season ticket renewals. And then today they sent out another letter where they tried to rewrite their embarrassing playoff loss in a way that's like, we battled back and then lost, but we battled back and then lost over again. The Jets are gaslighting their fans. You have a coach who is in a post game when they were done in the playoffs, when it was I think he said disgusting was the effort and unacceptable. And then you had players coming out being like, well, I wish you would have talked to us in the room about that first. Rick Bowness is coming back next year, and you have part of the team that doesn't, seem like they want him there. And you have a core that does not want to rebuild. And I'm gonna go down the line here. These are all the Jets that are out of contract going into this offseason, into the summer. Pierre-Luc Dubois, more on that. Vladislav Nemesnikov, Morgan Barron, who's on an ELC, he's an RFA. Carson Kuhlman, Axel Johnson-Falby, Saku Manalainen, Sam Gagner, still in the NHL somehow, Kevin Stenlund, Dylan Samberg, Logan Stanley, and goaltender David Rittich. And then the top of their lineup is tied up in 36-year-old Blake Wheeler, who has another year at 8.25, Kyle Connor, who's got another 3 years at 7.1, Mark Scheifele, the coward Mark Scheifele, who has another year at 6.1, Nikolai Ehlers, who has 2 more years at $6 million, Nino Niederreiter, who has another year at $4 million, Adam Lowry, who has another 3 seasons at 3.2, and Mason Appleton, who has another 2 seasons at 2.1. Plus their defense, Josh Morrissey signed for forever at 6.2. Nate Schmidt's got 2 more years at 5.9. Neil Pionk's got another 2 years at 5.8. Brendan Dillon and Dylan DeMello each have a year left on their contracts. The Jets are a tire fire. And I'm saying that in
an old tire fire.
Yeah, an old, aging tire fire that does need to rebuild. Their core is not young here. Blake Wheeler's 36. Kyle Connor's 26. Still in his prime. Mark Scheifele's 30, exiting that prime window. Nikolai Ehlers, injured a little bit, 27 years old. Pierre-Luc Dubois, 24, doesn't want to be there. Nino Niederreiter, 30. Adam Lowry, 30. Mason Appleton, 27. Nemesnikov, 30. Morgan Barron, 24. Kuhlman's 27. On defense, 28, 31, 27, 32, 30, 24, 24, 25. Yeah, they have Cole Perfetti. Connor Hellebuck is 29 years old, 1 year left on his deal at 6.1. And then in the minors, Brad Lambert in junior, Chaz Lucius in junior, 19 years old, Danny Jokin, 19 years old. There's pieces, but this is a team that is teetering on the cusp of just absolute collapse. And they're bringing back a coach who the team clearly does not get along with. And when they're not bailed out by Connor Hellebuck, they're terrible. Defensively, offensively, and sometimes they're just not a good-looking team. And at this point, Pierre-Luc Dubois is walking out that door. What they get for him, who knows? But oh my God, if we talk about teams that are going to blow things up, and we're talking about teams that are screwing things up royally, potentially in this episode, the Jets are going to be a team that should blow everything up, but is going to try to cling to those last gasps. And that's a bad way to go about things when you're not a team that has won anything. This team hasn't won a damn thing. Not a Western Conference title, not a Stanley Cup appearance, nothing. Blow it up. Get what you can for these core pieces. You can't tell me that Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, and Blake Wheeler aren't worth something to other teams in some way, shape, or form. With teams that have cap space. Look at Buffalo. They'd pay a premium for a guy like Kyle Connor or Mark Scheifele. You can do, but oh man. And it's all going to start with whatever domino is first. And I think it's going to be Pierre-Luc Dubois. I'd be shocked if it's not. And the ownership seems content to do nothing and just let it be. except for threatening fans. Just, I do not understand the Winnipeg Jets. And as a Habs fan, that's great because we're probably going to steal their potential biggest trade asset next year. If Pierre-Luc Dubois re-signs in Winnipeg, he is UFA at the end of that season if he signs a 1-year deal. He becomes such a huge trade asset at the deadline for them that if the Jets were smart, they would placate him, fire Rick Bowness, and then see what they can do. But I don't think that's going to happen, and that's to the Habs and Kent Hughes' benefit.
I just want to say, threatening your fans, that is like such a low-class move.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him, because if Twitter's anything to go by, they're pissed, to be honest.
I honestly, straight up, these people are not renewing because they were excited to have a team, and the team that they got was good at the beginning, but now they suck. They have the right to not want to pay for a poor product. I mean, we're free, so I'm not going to be threatening our fans, our listeners. But honestly, like, people have the right to withdraw their dollars if the product is not up to par. And I think that the season ticket holders are sending a message, and the message the Winnipeg Jets are getting apparently is be worse, which I just think is it's so counterproductive. You have an honest conversation. It's the same thing with the coach, talking to the media about his team without talking to them first. Just have an honest conversation. If you're the team, say, we know things aren't going well, but we need the season ticket holder support in order to continue to be able to attract free agents. This is what we have in the plans. Maybe you sell them on a rebuild, kind of like the Rangers sent the letter. The Montreal Canadiens are pretty transparent about the fact that they're in a rebuild. Just sell them on something. Be honest. Say that you're not good enough. Don't threaten to move. That is so low class. It is awful. Just don't it doesn't make sense to me. It's such a bad move. That's one. Ultimatums never work. They don't. And two, if you're Rick Bowness, like, what kind of a room are you running that the Winnipeg Jets are hearing from the media and not from your coach, what he thinks of your performance? And honestly, as a coach too, like, I get it. It's the NHL. They're not babies, all like, they're tough guys, blah, 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 whatever. But like, you should be able to tell your team you're disappointed in them. Like, I don't understand why is it a surprise to them, and the way that you put that, like, maybe put that in the room, but don't say that to the media. Like, if you're a coach, like, just watch Martin St. Louis. Even when he's disappointed in players, he talks about being disappointed in them, but he stands up for them at the same time in the media. Just, and again, I keep bringing it back to Martin St. Louis because I'm excited to talk about him soon. But don't tell the media something. Like, you stand up for your players in the media. And that's another thing that Darryl Sutter did not do this season. And I noticed that, and we talked about it every single time he threw a player under the bus or pretended one didn't exist, or he didn't know who he was, or didn't notice him, or whatever. Like, you're the coach. You put him on the ice. Of course you noticed him. Anyway, all this to say is that if you are a good leader in the room and you are standing up for your players, whether or not they're playing well, like, you have a much stronger chance of getting a buy-in from the people that trust you. And you don't have players being miserable, and you don't have season ticket holders canceling their season tickets. It's a tough economy. There's inflation. Give them a good product they're going to want to pay for. Anyway, that's my rant on the Winnipeg Jets, but we get to have some fun at the Boston Bruins' expense in just literally one moment. But first, this episode is brought to you by Athletic Greens. It is a product that I use literally every day, AG1. Maybe you're like me, you want to be healthy and eat well, but it's always easier said than done, as you know. That's no longer the case with AG1. With one delicious scoop of AG1 and a glass of water each day, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. Literally all the things. It can be hard and expensive to keep track of multiple different supplements and vitamins, not to mention how hard it can be on your stomach. AG1 costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right. I am taking a deep breath. I am inhaling and exhaling because it is time to talk about the Boston Bruins blowing a 3-1 series lead. And I can see the glee on your face. For anyone watching on YouTube, Scott is living his best life.
Well, I'm looking at Cap Friendly right now. And the Bruins, team who beat the 76-77 Montreal Canadiens points record. And all the Bruins fans, the last game of the year, thanks, guys. We beat your points record. We're better than any team you ever had in history. Here's the difference. That 76-77 Canadiens team won the Stanley Cup. Y'all lost to the last team into the playoffs and did it in embarrassing fashion in what was supposed to be your last dance season. They have $27,000 in cap space with their current roster right now. This was potentially Patrice Bergeron's last hurrah with this core. Do you want to know how many players they have signed next year with just a little over $10 million in cap space to fill out the rest of the roster, Laura? They have 14 players signed. And that includes David Pasternak's and Pavel Zacha's extensions kicking in. Going to UFA this summer, Nick Foligno, Patrice Bergeron, Tyler Bertuzzi, Thomas Nosek, Garnet Hathaway, Trent Frederick is RFA, David Krejci UFA, Jacob Lauko going to RFA, Dmitry Orlov going to UFA, and Connor Clifton going to UFA. Jakub Zabora will be a UFA in 2 years. So will Brandon Carlo and Derek Forbort. This Bruins team is very much on the cusp of, they've got a lot of work to do because they're going to lose big names. Tyler Bertuzzi has been immense for this team here. It cannot be understated how good he has fit in there. Pavel Zacha has been a good player for them. Is David Pastrnak going to repeat this season? Can he do it without Patrice Bergeron, who was non-committal on a future? This is not to take away anything. The Bruins were a wagon in the regular season. But as Andrew Berkshire put it, they were routinely outscoring their expected goals by 10+%, which is a sign that it's not going to last forever. And they never really valleyed during the season. Their valley came at the worst possible time for them. And I admittedly find it very funny because bad things happening to the Bruins is always funny. The Bruins are in a tough spot now. They don't need to rebuild, mind you. They have a very good team, but they've got to get creative now. You got to hope that your prospects can hit at the NHL level or that you can find cheaper pieces to fill what you need in this lineup. You have to replace Patrice Bergeron. Good luck with that. You got to replace a guy like Tyler Bertuzzi, who is fit very well for your team. What do you do on defense where Dmitry Orlov was such a monster for your team? It's a very difficult situation for all of them to be in. And it is funny because they blew it. They absolutely blew it. They were winning that game and then they didn't. And it's hilarious because I look at this now and it would have been almost poetic that had Boston hung on and beaten Florida, then lost to Toronto in round 2.
Honestly?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, you get to a point, like you were talking about, like they had that game and then they didn't. Like, why did you let it get to that point anyway? Like, you have a 3-1 series lead. Why are you letting it go to a game 7? Why? Like,
and the thing is, you know what this reminds me of? Had they won that game, like 2011, when the Habs took them to the brink in game 7, the only difference is the Bruins scored in that game 7 and went on to win the cup. Is this a thing Tampa can do now? Or Florida can do now? Because based on the injuries Patrice Bergeron was playing with, and also Linus Ullmark, who was apparently really struggling with injuries, which is why Jeremy Swayman started game 7, would they have been able to, how much further would they have been able to go before eventually it's just like, they're done? We got nothing here. There's no gas left. No matter what, it seems like the wheels were going to fall off this bus before too long. I'm just glad they fell off in the most hilarious way possible. It's like one of the wheels fell off the bus, bounced into a hot dog cart, and exploded a porta potty. That's how funny this was. So, like, I I mean, I've seen a lot of things like it, but I did not expect the Bruins based on the way they started this series. I did not expect it to be them. I truly did not. I almost expected it of the Hurricanes, but I did not expect this of the Bruins.
I honestly, truly expected it of the Leafs, to be honest, but I think I was just conditioned that way. Anyone saying that I should be happy for Leafs fans will be banned.
Yeah,
Um,
no.
and so that's it. I actually just wanted to point one more thing out, which came from our good friend JD. According to Frank Saravalli, the Flames literally never practiced the power play this season, not even once.
I'm gonna call and I'm throwing the challenge flag on that because there's no way. I would be hard pressed to believe there's not a coach in the NHL who wouldn't be like, we're gonna work on special teams today. If that is the case, oh my god. But I'm throwing the red challenge flag on that.
So
That feels like
it feels made up, right?
for sure.
Here's
Go ahead.
my interpretation of it is that they didn't do anything new on the power play. They practiced the same power play over and over again and didn't do anything new. Like that to me seems more plausible. But if you have any inside information, please let us know because I want to know if the Calgary Flames truly did not practice a power play once this season. In the meantime, we are out of time for today. In tomorrow's episode, we are going to be doing season reviews for Jordan Harris, Mike Hoffman, and Slavkovsky. So tune into our episode. Tune into tomorrow's episode. You can find our podcast wherever you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube. I might remember how to talk by the time we start our next episode. It's just been a long day, and I like shoveled food into my mouth before we started recording this episode. So like my brain is still kind of processing the digestion part. Real quick, you can find us on Twitter at LO_Canadiens. Subscribe, tell your friends, all of that. You can email us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. You can also leave comments in the YouTube comment section. And also, if you want to leave us a mailbag question in the comments, please write mailbag question at the beginning so that we know that you want us to bring it up on our Friday mailbags. Thank you so much for listening. You'll find Scott on Twitter at Scott Matley. You'll find me at The Active Stick, and you will find us tomorrow, hopefully, with me being able to speak properly. Thank you so much.